A man making $48,000 a year retired with $2.1 million in the bank. His neighbor made 3 times as much money and retired with almost nothing. Same country, same decade, same opportunities. One of them became a millionaire on an average salary. The other one didn't. And the difference between them has almost nothing to do with income. Stay with me for the next 18 minutes, because by the end of this video, you're going to understand the exact hidden mechanism that separates people who quietly build millions from people who work their entire lives and end up with almost nothing to show for it. This isn't about luck. It isn't about inheritance. And it definitely isn't about some secret stock tip. It's about a handful of decisions made consistently over a long period of time that almost nobody talks about. Before we go further, if you're someone who wants to actually understand money instead of just guessing your way through life, hit that like button right now, subscribe, and tap the bell, because Money Elevate breaks down exactly how ordinary people build extraordinary wealth. Now, let's get into it. Picture 2 friends. We'll call them Jonathan and William. They grew up on the same street, went to the same public high school, and at 22 years old, they both landed jobs paying almost the exact same salary. $45,000 a year. Nothing special, nothing glamorous, just an average income in an average American town. Jonathan did what most people do. He got the job, moved into a nicer apartment than he needed, financed a car he couldn't quite afford, and told himself he'd start saving once he got a raise. William did something different. And here's the strange part. From the outside, nobody could tell the difference between them. They wore similar clothes. They drove similar cars. They even ate at the same restaurants sometimes. But underneath the surface, something completely different was happening. We'll come back to exactly what that was. But first, you need to understand something that most financial advice completely ignores. Here's a hidden truth almost nobody realizes. Becoming a millionaire on an average salary isn't primarily a math problem. It's a psychology problem. The math is actually simple. Save a portion of your income, invest it consistently, let time and compound growth do the rest. A 12-year-old could understand the formula in about 30 seconds. So if the math is that simple, why do so few people actually become millionaires this way? Because the real obstacle isn't ignorance. It's identity. It's emotion. It's the invisible war between who you are today and who you'd have to become to get there. Most people don't fail to build wealth because they don't know what to do. They fail because doing it requires becoming a different kind of person than the one they currently are. And that's uncomfortable. That's the part nobody wants to admit. Let's go back to Jonathan and William, because their story is about to show you exactly what that difference looks like in real life. Jonathan's paycheck hit his account every 2 weeks, and almost immediately, it started disappearing. Not on anything crazy. A nicer phone plan. Dinner out because he'd had a long week. A subscription here, a subscription there. None of it felt reckless in the moment. It felt normal. It felt like living. And that's exactly the trap. Because lifestyle creep doesn't announce itself. It doesn't feel like a decision. It feels like drifting. William, on the other hand, made one decision early on that changed everything downstream. Before he ever saw his paycheck, a percentage of it was already gone, automatically moved into an investment account. Not because he was some kind of financial genius, but because he understood something most people never learn until it's too late. If money touches your hands first, it rarely makes it to your future. Out of sight, invested first, spend what's left. That one habit, repeated every 2 weeks for years, is where this story actually begins. Now, you might be thinking, that sounds simple, almost too simple to matter. But here's what almost nobody realizes. Small, consistent decisions, repeated over decades, don't add up. They multiply. And the reason most people underestimate this is because the human brain is terrible at understanding exponential growth. We're wired to think in straight lines. Compound growth doesn't work in straight lines. It works in curves, flat for a long time, and then suddenly dramatically upward. Let's put real numbers behind this, because I promised you evidence, not just motivation. Imagine William invests just $400 a month. That's roughly what Jonathan spends on takeout, subscriptions, and impulse purchases combined. At an average historical stock market return of around 10% annually before inflation, which is roughly what the S&P 500 has returned over the past several decades. That $400 a month grows into something almost unbelievable over time. After 10 years, it's worth around $82,000. That already sounds decent. But here's the twist. After 25 years, that same monthly contribution grows to well over $500,000. And after 35 years, it crosses the $1 million mark on an average salary, through nothing more exotic than consistency and time. Now, think about Jonathan. Same income, same years, same opportunities. But because his money left his hands before it ever had a chance to grow, he arrives at the same age with a fraction of that number. Sometimes nothing at all beyond a retirement account he barely contributed to. This is the part where most people feel something uncomfortable. Maybe you're doing the math on your own life right now. Maybe you're realizing how many years have already passed. I want you to sit with that feeling for a second instead of pushing it away. Because that discomfort, that quiet regret, is actually useful. It's the exact emotion that pushes people to finally change direction. But don't panic. What happens next is even more important than what you just heard, because the story isn't over, and neither is yours. Let's talk about why this gap exists in the first place, because it's not just about spending habits. It's about a completely different relationship with risk, time, and identity. Most people see investing as something rich people do after they already have money. But that's backwards. Investing is actually how average people become the kind of people who have money. The order matters. You don't wait until you're wealthy to start investing. Investing is the mechanism that creates the wealth in the first place. This single misunderstanding keeps millions of hardworking Americans stuck in the same financial position for their entire working lives. Here's another comparison worth thinking about. Old thinking says, I'll invest once I'm earning more. New thinking says the amount barely matters at the start. The habit is what matters. Because once the habit exists, increasing the amount later becomes almost effortless. But if the habit was never built in the first place, no amount of future income will fix that, because lifestyle simply expands to match whatever comes in. This is actually a well-documented pattern in behavioral economics, sometimes called lifestyle inflation, and it's one of the biggest reasons high earners can still end up with surprisingly little net worth. Now, let's fast forward. Picture Jonathan and William at 55 years old. Same neighborhood, technically. Same number of years worked. But their lives look completely different. Jonathan is still working, not because he loves his job, but because he has no choice. His retirement account has some money in it, but nowhere near enough. Every conversation about the future comes with a quiet undertone of anxiety. William, meanwhile, is having a very different kind of conversation. He's not rich in the flashy sense. He still drives a normal car. He still lives in a normal house. But he has options. He could retire early if he wanted to. He could take a lower-paying job he actually enjoys because the pressure is gone. That, right there, is what real wealth actually buys you. Not yachts, not private jets. Freedom, and the ability to make decisions without financial fear controlling every choice. This is where most people expect me to say, so just cut your spending and invest everything. But that's not quite right either. And here's the part that most financial content completely skips over. Extreme restriction almost never lasts. If you try to save 80% of your income and live like you have nothing, you'll probably burn out within a year, resent the process, and quit entirely. The people who actually reach millionaire status on an average salary aren't the most disciplined people on earth. They're the ones who build a system simple enough to survive bad months, distractions, and life getting in the way. Consistency beats intensity every single time. This brings us to one of the biggest reveals in this entire video. The real secret isn't a specific stock, a specific side hustle, or some hidden investment strategy. The real secret is removing yourself from the decision as much as possible. Automate the saving. Automate the investing. Make wealth building something that happens whether you're motivated or not, whether you remember or not, whether you're having a good week or a terrible one. Willpower is unreliable. Systems are not. Let's talk numbers again because I want this to feel real, not theoretical. The median household income in the United States sits somewhere around $70,000 a year. That's not rich. That's not glamorous. But if a household earning that amount consistently invests just 15% of their income starting in their late 20s, historical market averages suggest they could realistically cross the $1 million mark before they turn 60, without ever touching six figures in annual salary. This isn't a fantasy scenario. This is math that plays out quietly in unremarkable households all across the country every single year. You just never hear about it because people who build wealth this way rarely talk about it. They don't post about it. They don't brag about it. They just keep going. Now here's a twist most people don't expect. Time matters more than income. Let that sink in for a second. A 25-year-old investing $300 a month will very likely end up with more money at retirement than a 35-year-old investing $600 a month, purely because of how many years compound growth has to work. This is why the biggest financial regret among older Americans isn't usually, "I wish I'd earned more." It's, "I wish I'd started sooner." So what does starting actually look like in practical terms for someone listening to this right now, on an average income, wondering if this could actually apply to their own life? First, pay yourself before anyone else touches your paycheck. Set up an automatic transfer the same day you get paid, moving a percentage, even if it's small at first, directly into an investment account. Not a regular savings account sitting there losing value to inflation. An actual investment account where your money has a chance to grow. Second, start with low-cost, diversified index funds rather than trying to pick individual stocks. This isn't the exciting answer people want to hear, but it's the answer backed by decades of financial research. Most professional fund managers fail to consistently beat the overall market over long periods, which means a simple, low-cost index fund often outperforms complicated strategies over time without requiring you to become a finance expert. Third, increase your contribution percentage slightly every time your income goes up, before your lifestyle has a chance to expand and absorb that extra money. This single habit is what separates people who eventually earn more but still stay stuck from people who earn more and use that increase to accelerate their freedom. Fourth, protect the habit during hard months instead of abandoning it completely. If money gets tight, it's okay to reduce the amount temporarily. What matters is that the system keeps running in the background, even at a smaller scale, rather than stopping entirely and having to rebuild the habit from zero. Now, I want to address something honestly, because I promised you truth, not just motivation. This path isn't instant. It isn't flashy. There's no version of this story where someone becomes a millionaire in 18 months on an average salary without extraordinary circumstances. If anyone promises you that, they're selling you something. What we're talking about here is a slow, quiet, almost boring process that becomes extraordinary specifically because almost nobody has the patience to stick with something boring for 20 or 30 years. And that's actually the final secret hiding inside this entire story. Wealth building on an average salary isn't about intelligence. It isn't about talent. It's about patience in a world that has completely lost the ability to wait for anything. Every part of modern life is designed to make you want things faster, spend faster, decide faster. The person who can resist that pull, even slightly, even imperfectly, ends up in a completely different financial position than everyone rushing past them. Let's return to Jonathan and William one final time, because their story deserves a real ending. Jonathan isn't a failure. He's not lazy, and he's not foolish. He's simply a normal person who never built the system early, and by the time he understood what was happening, decades had already passed. That's not a tragedy reserved for fictional characters. That's the quiet reality for millions of hardworking people across this country right now. Today, reading their bank statements with a familiar sense of unease. William isn't a genius either. He didn't have some secret advantage Jonathan lacked. He simply made one decision early, protected that decision through good years and bad years, and let time do what time does. That's the entire story. Not complicated, not mysterious, just consistently applied for long enough to become undeniable. If you're watching this and you're closer to Jonathan's story than William's right now, that doesn't mean the door is closed. It means today is the version of early that you actually have. The best time to start this was years ago. The second best time is right now, before you close this video and let today become just another day that passed without the one decision that actually mattered. Before you go, if this video shifted the way you think about money, even slightly, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Send it to a friend who's stuck in the same cycle Jonathan was in. Sometimes the most valuable thing you can give someone isn't advice. It's the exact video that finally makes the math click for them. And if you want more breakdowns like this one, real strategies, real numbers, real psychology behind how ordinary people quietly build extraordinary wealth, subscribe to Money Elevate, because this is only the beginning of the story, and where you go from here is entirely up to you.